Guys, we're back. The future. So, the old INFJ born or created, we're trying to work that out. I don't know. I've got this sort of feeling. I might be a bit biased that I've always been like this. But there is some level of because of the upbringing, could have been a little bit hard or interesting, or nutcase mother, whatever. And very polarized, very different extremes of environments. Like when my mother ran away and kidnapped us and all that sort of thing. Super poverty, like super poverty. I mean, you could go a couple of levels lower maybe, but not really. And then, coming back to live with my dad, fairly rich. Fairly rich, middle class rich, but still pretty well off. And then my grandparents on that side of things, they weren't rich or anything, but they were rich with grandparents on my father's side. They were rich with goodness, just being decent people, all that sort of stuff. Character, rich in character. And then on my mother's side and her mother and stuff like that, not so much in the way of good character. So those extremes, which could be quite confusing for a young kid. So it's hard to say, whether, in my case, born or created INFJ. I know my brothers are different. None of them are INFJs. So, fair chance it was born for me, I think so. I think so. But the future, I wanted to talk about one of the things that I always thought of myself as being weird, or different, was the seeming ability to see the future. That's how I explained it. And I didn't sort of say it too much to anyone growing up. But once I became a bit more comfortable or confident about not caring what people thought when I told them that weird shit, I would throw it out there as this is pretty weird, but remember that time where 6 months before it happened, I said this was going to happen. 18 months before it happened, I said this was going to happen. So there's been things, growing up where, like my mother, when 4 or 5 months, 6 months even, before she kidnapped us, she'd shown me that atlas, my atlas, pointed to a map in Australia and said, hey, what do you reckon about living there with, this other fella? It's like, that's spelling it out, right? I didn't comment, I didn't say anything, I just looked at her like she was a crazy person. And I never brought that atlas home again. I'll tell you the story about the atlas, actually. I'll come back to it. I'll see if I can come back to it. But I saw where she was going. I saw what she was trying to do, I think, as a 9-year-old kid. I made no comment on it. I spoke to no one about it. I probably processed it a lot. And then one day when she said to me, I want you to come home early today. Make sure you don't hang around with your friends. Come straight home from school. It's important. Well, I read all those signs and all her body language, and I just knew the vibe and the mood underneath. So it's like, I don't know. It seems weird. I don't know if this is a thing, but when people are sort of talking as if I don't even know if I believe this as I say it, but I feel like I can see auras or colours or something. It's just, I don't know. They're just the emotion, just the something, the vibe. Pick up on that vibe, and I knew when she said that something's going on. I'm definitely not coming home early today. And geez, I remember the anger when I finally did get home. The anger, the look on her face that just, where she just picked up my bike and threw it down the hill into the bush. The one that I'd gotten for Christmas a couple of years earlier or something like that. And so, that was my first bike, and just the look of rage on her face when I turned up and bundled me in the car. It was, somehow I knew that I was invoking that by not coming home that day. So, I felt like I could see the future. And then it came later on when I was an apprentice for a government organisation, and it just felt like all the signs were that this size of workshop in that town, it was a fairly big organisation sort of thing, because they were splitting the organisations up, and it was all affiliated, but then they were splitting it all up, and the way I saw it, it couldn't continue, and I'm a 16, almost 17-year-old kid. I knew nothing about taxes and stuff like that. The storeman was doing me taxes for me. They were trying to talk me into being a union member. Are you not a union member? A union, I don't know. I was like, nah, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be anything part of a club. I hate clubs. I hate all your mobs. And anyway, I just saw the demise of it, and I, because of a couple of other reasons as well, transferred my apprenticeship down to where my mother was and my brothers, mainly to hang around with my brothers. And there's some Jesus stuff in there and all that too, but there was a few things going on anyway. And a couple of episodes ago, I told you about that day that I had, and it was a bit embarrassing. I just sort of, leave town. That might have been 6 months after that day that I left or something like that, I might have gone down for holidays at my mother's place and got conned into the cult by the psychologists. Told you all that story. But so I might have been looking for an escape there as well, but so there's a whole lot of layers to that. But either way, 6 months later, that place closed down and got privatised, and any apprenticeships would have been washed up anyway. They would have been closed off. So I did well getting out ahead. And then when I was in, so it was a bigger place. Actually, I should have said where I was then. That was a slip up, wasn't it? When I was down there, that place closed up as well. So anyway, 18 months after I got out early. So I guess those are my first 3 sort of times when I felt like I could read the future. I could see the writing on the wall. And I don't think it is any woo-woo thing. I've heard it explained. I did go into the MBTI stuff there a couple of years ago, 3 years ago almost now. It was July when I started looking into it, so it's coming up for that now. So it'll be almost 3 years ago that I first found out about what INFJ was and that sort of thing, and had a look into it. And one of the things I did find in one of the videos, or some of the talk somewhere, was that INFJs just collect all the details and see the patterns, and they just process the information subconsciously. And it seems to make sense to them, but they don't know why. So that's all it is, probably. Just a massive collector of information, super aware, hyper awareness of things and vibes and what have you. Things that you can't explain to people, quantify. Not like an INTJ probably could. But I think you can see stuff, see it happening. There was plenty of other times where I had a fallout with a mate. Well, actually, he wanted to have a party. I think I did. I tell you that story? He was going to stab me with the screwdriver, and I decided to give him enough rope to hang himself, and then he ended up on crack and in jail, stealing cars and lawnmowers stealing a lawnmower, little basic lawnmower for a crack habit. Anyway, I saw it all in that split second. If you go down this road, you're going to have this happen. And I told him the next morning, okay mate, this is where your life's going to go. And it did. But that didn't stop him trying to fuck me up. Had some business dealing sort of stuff that I was doing, and through my dad. My dad was trying to help me and my brother sort of get out and away from my mother with business sort of stuff, so you get you're not stuck in a place. And this fellow and a mate of his tried some strategy stuff to dog me into somewhere to set something up with that and this and that. And it's funny, I had a couple of knocks on the doors from authorities, and it's like, what's all this about? And I hadn't really done anything wrong, but it was like the dob in sort of stuff, like people. It would be just like the old Me Too thing, or the Amber Heard stuff, where someone said something that wasn't true, but everyone's just going to believe it, right? I've better go and investigate that. That doesn't look right. And people just believe it without checking. Anyway, luckily enough, not lucky, but lucky that people that turned up, or that rung up, or whatever it was, to investigate these things were reasonable. And I can get information out of people. Where did I read this recently? Was it a book? The book that I'm reading at the moment. Was it? It's about some psychology thing of the friendship effect. It might have been it was in one of Bo Miller's podcasty thing. It's probably about third or fourth one in. And he was talking about some FBI thing or something. This CIA spies, yeah. Some friendship effect and some sort of thing that someone had made a study of this plus this plus this plus this equal, and it was duration and time and proximity. Yeah, how to get information as a spy. You need the friendship effect or something like that. That's not quite exactly right, but there's a friendship something, and you need proximity and duration and consistency and something else. It didn't help. It didn't hurt that you had things in common. And so this is a known thing, and it's just something that I think INFJs can do just off the bat. If I can, as long as I don't come off too judgy at the beginning and get people on the back foot, as long as I come in on the right way, I can just get information out of people that they shouldn't give. In the old days, before real hacking on computers and things like that, there was a thing called phreaking. I've got this book. It's called The Masters of Deception. It was the beginning of computer hacking. And this thing called phreaking, which is P-H-R, phreaking. And it was to do with, it was using phones to get information. And the biggest thing was social engineering, being able to ring up and pretend you're so-and-so, and you're just like, hey, yeah, and you get this information out of people when some department's going to be open to, or when they throw their rubbish out, because they would go through the rubbish and get all the passwords and things like that, back when things were on paper. And it was super interesting just how they go about getting information. And in my careers, that's one of the things I'm really good at, being able to have a chat to people, and it's just a conversation. But they tell me stuff. I almost don't even have to ask them. I can lay down a couple of things and it's like, oh yep, they go, oh that's the gate I've got to go through. Okay, they don't get dragged through the gate, they walk through the gate. And it's not a deception thing, it's just natural. People like telling me stuff. Like I was saying a couple of episodes before, I can be walking down through the supermarket or down the street, strangers, if we cross eyes, they smile. And I might not be smiling yet, but I always smile back. But I think the eyes smile somehow. Somehow INFJs are drawn to be able to get information out of people. But anyway, these couple of mobs that came around and were to investigate me and my brother. And this was just a spiteful thing that a mate had done. He was a mate, and he knew a lot about. He was actually my brother's mate first, and he used to hang around with us a lot, all the time, thick as thieves. And my dodgy cousin, and they were hanging around together and running amok, and some other dodgy fella in town. And these people, when they called in and all came around, I was able to handle it quite well. I was able to get the information because I needed the information. I needed the information to work out what has happened. What has happened? What has really happened? And then I processed. I super processed. Made a couple of phone calls as well. Got a couple of other tidbits of information here or there. And then I super processed. I knew exactly what had happened and when and why and what the motives were, the whole thing. like a whole big strategy game, like a whole chess game. Not in real time. It was a day later or something, or hours later. It was funny. I decided the way out was to confront them. The people that had tried to fuck me up, my brother, they'd colluded. They thought they were pretty smart. They'd done all this stuff. And, it wasn't that bad that, I'd kicked my mate out and I told him what was going to happen. There was no punch up or anything like that. I was still able to sort of talk in the street, or so when I rocked up to where he was staying at this other fella's place, at the caravan, it was back at this dodgy fella's place, because I knew the other fella as well. I hung around with him for a year or so as well, so I knew him quite well. And when I rocked up there for a cup of tea, and it was a weird thing, I was just going there to say, hey, this is all gangster stuff, it was all, but it was on a much lower level. But I was able to say to them, oh, this mob turned up and they've shut me down. This is going to happen, this is going to happen. Shit, I don't know what I'm going to do. Anyway, but and then I changed the subject to something else, and they'll maybe bring it back to that other thing, and just play it down like I wasn't here to talk about that, but it's obvious how it was, but I played it really well, I thought. And all it did, it just, okay, let's just end that whole thing, end that a little, otherwise it's going to escalate to tit for tat and all this sort of stuff. Let's just end that. Let you think you've won, but you haven't. Because for me, that was the win. I did get another win somewhere along the line as a thing. My brother did something, and it was a little bit dangerous. But it was to make a point to this other fella a few weeks later that he didn't actually win. And but he wouldn't have been able to know. He would have just wondered, and he might have known, but he wouldn't, So I don't know. It all went away, and I actually luckily left town after that, and went to start the first of me careers of good stuff, So managed to leave town. But them trying to stuff that up was dangerous, because it could have meant that I wouldn't have been able to leave town, because of I had a whole bunch of business stuff that I needed to do to finish off and stuff like that, cars and stuff. So yeah. But what I'm saying is, it's like I read the future. I read the strategy of what happened. Processed a whole bunch of information, and I read the situation. Another couple of times I did that, and a few years later, and I always got it right. If I can get all the information, I'm good at getting information. Generally, I can process it quite well. I like playing chess, but I don't really have any plans. I don't have any strategies as such, apart from I enjoyed being unpredictable, which usually doesn't work against someone methodical, but it's fun. I don't know. So I don't know that there is any psychic ability other than the ability to collect a whole lot of information to be able to categorize that information with different weightings, different levels of importance, and something else in the brain processes it, like that protective dog processes it and gives you the information, gives you the answer. Doesn't tell you how it came up with it, but it gives it to you, and you trust that dog. Yeah, all right, that's the answer. That's what we've got to do. I've collected the information. I've put all the priorities on it. The dog's processed it all, and it's given it back to you. And now we know what the future is, or we know what happened, or we know what happened behind those closed doors. Anyway, INFJ psychic ability. I think I've always had the too much information, overthinking thing. And I wouldn't change it for the world. Wouldn't change it for the world. It has been very confusing at times and very alienating, and life can be a bit lonely sometimes. A couple of episodes back there, it was a bit weird at the end. I need to go and fix that situation, I think. I've started on it, and it's something that's bothered me for forever, and I know that if it was one of my first sort of real regrets as such, that day, stuffing up, and it's quite confusing for me because, hang on, I was the one that was being wronged. I just dealt with it all wrong, how I went and sorted it out. So I think door slamming is a good thing. I got no problem with it. But I think you got to door slam like an adult, not like a little bitch. You know. I hate being a little bitch, but I can do it too easily. I'm embarrassed by that. So maybe I should learn from that and stop doing that. Yeah. If I feel like I'm being slighted. Try and do it in a grown up manner. Because I'm fully grown now. Emotionally though. Alright. Hey, thanks for watching.